The Ashes, change is afoot. This may be the last chance for England's veterans to win in Australia. When England next play a test, in the Caribbean in March, how different will things look? New captain, new coach, new managing director of men's cricket, new players, but how many? All these questions must be tackled in the wake of this Ashes debacle, but for now, in the pleasant surrounds of the Bellarive Oval, Hobart, a last chance to win on Australian soil for many of those involved. Once upon a time, Tasmania was where England gathered for a final warm-up before the opening test at the Gabba. It was a typical ploy from Cricket Australia to stymie the touring team, given the contrast between the climate here and the steamy humidity of Brisbane. Now, the city holds an Ashes test for the first time, and for some of England's players, it may be the last time they play in the country. The core of this team is experienced and aging. Even the preternaturally baby-faced Joe Root will turn 35 the next time this tour comes around. If he is still going strong by then, and has not been ground down by the relentless schedule, he will be close to having played 200 tests. Root has played 13 of his 113 tests in Australia and has yet to end up on the winning side in any of them. Only 2 of them have not been lost, including the desperate last-ditch rearguard last week in Sydney. Stuart Broad, 1 win from 14 tests in Australia, and James Anderson, 3 wins from 21 tests, will certainly not be back here again. David Mallon, Ben Stokes, Johnny Bairstow, Chris Wokes and Mark Wood are all the wrong side of 30. This series has lost much of its edge, with the Ashes no longer up for grabs and the prospect of a whitewash no longer motivation for Australia. But each test is an event in itself, placed in the broader context of the series and the World Test Championship, and for every England player it is an opportunity to show that they retain the hunger and desire to play Test cricket, as Bairstow did so wonderfully in Sydney. Judging by the sequence of events at Wednesday's practice, where Sam Billings took up initial occupation in the nets with the wicket-keeping gloves, and then spent a considerable amount of time in the middle taking catches, he looks set for a debut, and will become England's 700th Test cricketer. Bairstow and Stokes are winning their fitness battles, but Bairstow's thumb would inhibit his keeping and Stokes is unlikely to bowl, given the side injury he suffered in Sydney. That makes balancing the side problematic, as it was throughout the summer against India in Stokes' absence. England played 5 seamers in the pink ball test at Adelaide and no spinner, their worst selection of the tour, but may now have to leave out Jack Leach if Stokes cannot bowl. If Cameron Green plays, it is England, for once, who will look upon Australia enviously for an all-rounder to balance the equation. The attack may be freshened up by the return of Ollie Robinson and Wokes, with Mark Wood set to keep his place for a 3rd consecutive test and one of Anderson and Broad to be omitted. With Broad having taken 5 wickets in Sydney, Anderson is most likely to give way, having played 3 tests in succession. Hasib Hamid is likely to be taken out of the firing line, his place going to Rory Burns, which means as many as 4 changes again to the side. Like Anderson, Mitchell Starc has been pressed into heavy service, but the pink ball wizard indicated he was feeling fresh and ready to go, despite looking jaded at Sydney. The final choice appears to be between Jai Richardson, who has not played since taking a 5-wicket haul in Adelaide, and Scott Boland, who is recovering from a blow to the ribs after a fall in the Sydney test. Usman Khawaja is expected to keep his place, but at the top of the order instead of Marcus Harris. There was uncertainty for a long period of time over the 5th test, initially because of the intransigence of the Western Australian state government and their unwillingness to loosen COVID restrictions, and then because of the increase in COVID around Christmas and the New Year in Melbourne and Sydney. It is a minor miracle that the tour has reached this stage, with only Travis Head among the players of both sides having tested positive for COVID. Hobart's climate and the 3 p.m. start time means there will be a chill in the air when each day comes to a close. The combination of that and the pink Kookaburra should encourage seamers more than usual over the next 5 days, although 3 of the pitches so far have been unusually seamer-friendly and England have been outplayed on each of them. This is the land of Ricky Ponting and David Boone, now happily recovered after a bout of COVID and back as match referee for this game, and of flat Jack Simmons, the Lancashire all-rounder who was a legendary figure in these parts in the 1970s, and is one of 14 players in the Tasmanian Hall of Fame. After his pre-series defenestration, Tim Payne is on leave on the mainland and will not be around for Hobart's big day, and there are no Tasmanians in the Australian side this week. How many of the England hierarchy will be around in 2 months remains to be seen.